Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel S.K.T. English Guru. Today you can learn a very interesting poem written by one of the greatest English poets. This poem I am going to teach you today was written by John Donne, who is thought of as the founder of the metaphysical school of poetry. Dear friends, prior to my detailed analysis on this poem, I'll first and foremost make you aware of John Donne. Dear friends and children, John Donne was born in 1572 and started writing in 1590s. He lived through the Jacobean age and died in 1631. Dear friends, what do you mean by the Jacobean age or the Jacobean era? The Jacobean era refers to the period in English and Scottish history that coincides with the reign of James VI of Scotland, who also inherited the crown of England as James I. So, the Jacobean era succeeds the Elizabethan era and precedes the Carolingian era. After the Elizabethan era comes the Jacobean era. In short, the Jacobean era or age means the period of time when James I was in power in England. So John Donne lived through the Jacobean age and died in 1631. So John Donne can be thought of as a poem connecting these two eras. So he is a connecting link between the Elizabethan age and the Puritan age. What do you mean by the Puritan age? That is the period between 1625 and 1675. That period, the Puritan era. The Puritan era means the period between 1625 and 1675. That is known as the Puritan age or the age of John Milton, who was also one of the greatest English poets. So the Puritans struggled for righteousness and liberty. There was a civil war in England during this period, so they always struggled for righteousness and liberty. So John Donne is a connecting link between the Elizabethan age and the Puritan age. Dear friends, the age of Donne, comprising the last decade of the 16th century and early decades of the 17th century, is therefore an age of transition. By this time, the Renaissance impulse has exhausted itself. The Elizabethan zest for life is gone, and the Elizabethan exuberance or optimism has been succeeded by a mood of apprehension, disillusion and defeat. So during the Elizabethan period, the country was peaceful, there was no war, people had a sense of well-being, people felt a sense of well-being, and that the Elizabethan era is usually regarded as the golden era of English literature, as there were no conflicts and problems. But during the Puritan era, there were a lot of clashes, commotions, insurrections and problems. So there were various causes which gave rise to this pessimism, despondency and anxiety during this Puritan era. There were first of all the political reasons, and there was a widespread uncertainty and instability, especially in the latter years of the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. So dear friends, John Donne was a highly educated person. I told you a short while ago he is still regarded as the founder of the metaphysical school of poetry. I'll later on make you aware of the metaphysical school of poetry and its characteristics. And now I will tell you more about John Donne. Now, John Donne was the son of a rich iron merchant, and his parents were Catholics, and he was a Catholic too. But during this period, Catholics were subject to severe persecution, and his education couldn't be continued at Oxford and Cambridge because of his religion. Because of such bitter experiences, he gradually repudiated the church in which he was born and renounced all denominations and began to call himself simply Christian. A similar situation existed in England, in Sri Lanka too, during the period when the British were ruling in our country. Those who believed in Catholicism or Christianity were given a lot of benefits, and they were able to enjoy all the perks and privileges. And those who dislike, or those who denounced Christianity or Catholicism, were totally deprived of their perks and privileges. So similar situation existed in England also, and those who followed Catholicism were subjected to severe persecution, and there were a lot of problems. So John Donne also had to stop his education at Oxford and Cambridge because of his religion. So because of such experiences, he repudiated the church in which he was born, renounced all denominations, and began to call himself simply Christian during this period. So by the end of the 16th and the beginning of the 17th century, the great Elizabethan poetry had exhausted itself. Signs of decadence were everywhere, and there were usually three traditions that were generally followed: the Spenserian, the Arcadian, and the Petrarchan. So everything was artificial and conventional. There was little that was original or remarkable, and there was much sugared melody or intellectual emptiness in poems written during this period. So in the first decades of the 17th century, there was a revolt against this outdated and exhausted Elizabethan poetry. Anyway, dear friends, John Donne, I told you, was a highly educated person. So he is regarded as a metaphysical poet. So what do you mean by metaphysics? Metaphysics means the branch of philosophy that deals with the nature of existence, truth and knowledge. Then who are metaphysical poets? Metaphysical poets means a group of 17th century English poets who explored the nature of the world and human life, and who used images that were surprising at that time. So they were metaphysical poets. So they were highly educated people. So they experienced the Renaissance. What do you mean by the Renaissance? The Renaissance means the revival of art, learning and literature that took place in Europe during the 14th, 15th and 16th centuries. The Renaissance, the revival of art, learning and literature that took place in Europe in the 14th, 15th and 16th centuries. So John Donne experienced the Renaissance. So that's why their knowledge developed. They were able to expand their horizon because of new discoveries, new knowledge, because there was a great body of knowledge that erupted in England. So this Renaissance brought about the Industrial Revolution, which drastically changed the entire European society. So anyway, during the Renaissance period, a lot of new discoveries were made, and John Donne, poets like John Donne, wrote poetry using very intelligent language. So anyway, so John Donne was a highly educated person. So metaphysicism in poetry. Then what do you mean by metaphysicism in poetry? Metaphysicism in poetry is the fruit of the Renaissance tree becoming overripe and approaching putrescence. So metaphysicism in poetry is the fruit of the Renaissance tree becoming overripe and reaching putrescence. So During this period, metaphysical poets wrote many poems, and their poetry or their work, they were highly influenced by the Renaissance concepts. Dear friends, metaphysical poems show clashes and conflicts brought about or generated by the clashes between the medieval beliefs and Renaissance concepts. So this poem is such an example. Dear friends, now John Donne's poetry is heavily overloaded with metaphysical conceits, which may be defined as the excessive use of over-elaborated metaphors and similes drawn from the most far-fetched, remote and unusual sources like metallurgy, alchemy, astronomy, cosmology, mathematics, science, and so on and so forth. That's why they were highly educated. That's why their poems were regarded as those that were somewhat difficult to be understood. And they used images, metaphors and similes drawn from very unfamiliar sources like metallurgy, alchemy, astrology and cosmology. Now I can tell you some examples. Now in one of the poems titled Valediction Forbidden Morning, John Donne uses a very popular metaphysical conceit. Now they are the two souls of the two lovers are compared to the 2 feet of a compass, which appear to be separate but in reality are united at the top. So that is a metaphysical conceit. So metaphysical conceit is an unusual comparison drawn from most far-fetched, remote, unfamiliar sources like alchemy, metallurgy, astronomy, cosmology, science, mathematics, and so on and so forth. So that's why their poetry, their poems were somewhat difficult to understand, and their writings were usually beyond the understanding of the ordinary people, because they, since being highly educated people, they used a lot of words and metaphors and similes drawn from those unusual, far-fetched, remote sources. So dear friends, this poem you are going to learn today is one of the greatest holy sonnets written by John Donne. So what is this? Death be not proud. This is the title of this poem. Death be not proud. You know that death was a powerful and dreadful, mighty personal reality, was a medieval belief. That death was a powerful and personal reality. That death was a powerful, dreadful and personal reality was a medieval belief. But John Donne goes against this belief, and he says that death is not powerful. It is neither powerful nor dreadful, and death is nothing to be afraid of. He says, this is how he begins the poem. Death be not proud. Death, you don't be proud. Death be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. Death, you don't be proud. Death, you don't be proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful. Some people consider you to be mighty and dreadful, but you are not so. Death is generally supposed to be mighty and dreadful, but in reality it is neither mighty nor dreadful. Therefore it should not be proud of its power. Death be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. For means because you are not so. Thou means are, art means thou means you, are means art, thou art means you are. You are not so. Death be not proud. Death, you don't be proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. So, death, you don't be proud, though some people consider you to be mighty and dreadful, because you are not so. You are not powerful. So, John Donne calls upon death to shed its pride, as it has no real power. So this is Donne's bold denunciation of death. This is Donne's bold, very brave denunciation of death. So you are not so. You are not powerful. You are not mighty. For those whom thou thinkst thou dost overthrow die not. Those people whom you think you kill do not die. They don't die. Those people whom you think you kill do not die. Because those whom you think you dost overthrow die not. So death's intimidation is diminished as he points out its weaknesses one by one. So John Donne says, death is not mighty and powerful. There is no reason why you should be afraid of it. He talks to death. Here he talks to death. That's another very important technique John Donne uses. In most of his poems, he addresses somebody. I can tell you several examples. In the poem titled The Sun Rising, he addresses the sun. The busy old fool, unruly sun, why dost thou thus through windows and through curtains call us on? Must to thy motions lovers' seasons run. So that is how the poem The Sun Rising begins. He addresses the sun. Busy old fool, unruly sun, why dost thou thus through windows and through curtains call us on? Must to thy motions lovers' season run. The poet addresses the sun as an interfering old fool, and one who doesn't care for any rules and regulations. And he is angry with the sun because it has been guilty of peeping at them and disturbing the two lovers. So that is how he begins that poem. In another poem titled The Canonization, he uses the same technique, the apostrophe. He begins the poem like this: for God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love. For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love. The canonization, the poem titled Canonization, begins like this: for God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love. The poet asks his lover, who tries to dissuade him from loving him, to hold his tongue and let him love. So that is how he begins that poem. So then this poetic technique, apostrophe, is one of the popular poetic techniques employed by or used by John Donne. In this poem, he uses the same thing. He does the same thing. He addresses death. Death, be not proud. He talks to death. Death, be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. Death, you don't be proud. You are not mighty and dreadful. Though some people consider you to be mighty and dreadful and dangerous, you are not so. Right? You are not powerful. Right? For those whom thou thinkst thou dost overthrow, die not. Those whom you think you kill do not die. Right? Do not die. Poor death. Poor death. Now he looks down upon death. He scornfully, denounce death. No canst thou kill me. You could not kill me, yet you could not yet kill me. So then you are not powerful. From rest and sleep, which but thy pictures be, much pleasure then from thee much more must flow. The next line. From rest and sleep, which but thy pictures be. Dear friends, we know that rest and sleep resemble death. Rest and sleep resemble death. So when you are sleeping, right, it's similar to your death. It's a picture of death. Sleep is a real carbon copy of real death. When we are in the reclining post, or when we are sleeping, we are in the reclining post, and it's just like a picture of death. So sleep and rest are only pictures of death. From sleep and rest we get much pleasure. From sleep and rest, which are only the pictures of death, we get much pleasure. Then from real death, much more must flow. Much more pleasure must flow. Rest and sleep, I told you, resemble death, and as great comfort and pleasure result from death, so great a comfort and pleasure must as great comfort and pleasure result from sleep and rest, then so great a comfort and pleasure must result from the real death. That is why John Donne says, from rest and sleep, which but thy pictures be much pleasure, then from thee much more must flow. Much more must flow. And death, then, and sooner our best men with thee do go, and sooner our best men with thee do go, rest of their bones and souls delivery. Dear friends, man is, according to Christianity or Catholicism, man is made up of body and soul. We get the body from the earth, and we get our soul from our God. So after our death, and sooner our best men with thee do go. The sooner our best men go with you, the better it is for them, because they will have an eternal life in the heaven. And sooner our best men with thee do go, rest of their bones and souls delivery. And their souls are freed from their bodily prisons, and our body goes back to the exact place it came from, and our soul goes back to God. That's why soul's delivery, it says, the sooner our best men with thee do go, rest of their bones and souls delivery. Soul's delivery means their souls are freed from their bodily prisons. Dear friends, then there's a saying that those whom God loves much die young. That means the sooner we die, the better it is for us, because we will have an eternal life in the heaven. So that is why John Donne says, the sooner our best men with thee do go, souls, rest of their bones and souls delivery. Thou art saved to fate, chance, kins and desperate men's. You know that death relies on the power of fate, woe, fate, chance, kin and desperate men. It is sicknesses that kill people. It is accidents that kill people. It is hired killers that kill people. So death cannot kill people. Death has to rely on the power of poison, power of fate, chance, kins and desperate men to kill people. So he has no power. He is dependent on these things. He is dependent on these things. He relies on the power of fate, woe, fate, chance, kins and desperate men to kill people. So then he says, and dost with poison, woe and sickness dwell. So dwell means live. Death lives with poison, woe and sickness. It is poison that kills people. It is sicknesses that kill people. It is woes that kill people. So then he has very bad, filthy, obnoxious, repulsive companions. He has bad companions. He lives with bad companions. So how can he be proud? How can he be proud when he lives with bad or repulsive companions? So he has bad companions. He relies on the power of fate, kins and chance to kill people. So then is he powerful? No, he is not powerful. Then he says, so thou art saved to fate, chance, kins and desperate men, and dost with poison, woe and sickness dwell. He lives with such things. And then Donne's forceful witness to man's superiority over death. Right? This is Donne's forceful witness to man's superiority over death, which was traditionally considered not only powerful but also personal. So this is a bold denunciation of death. So dear friends, he again says, and poppy and charms can make us sleep sleep as well. Poppy and charm can sleep as well. You know that, dear friends, opium preparations or similar other intoxicants or drugs supposed to have magical proportions can induce better sleep with far gentle and painless operation. Poppy and charms can also make us sleep. Poppy, similar opium preparations or similar other intoxicants or drugs supposed to have magical properties can induce or can make us sleep or can induce better sleep with far gentle and painless operation. So you are inferior to these things. You are inferior to poppy and charms, which also can make us sleep. You are not powerful. You are second to these things. You are also second to poppy and charms, right? Death and better than thy stroke. They can make us sleep better than your stroke. Stroke, right? And why swells thou then? Then why do you swell? There is no reason why you should be proud of your power. You have no power at all. You have no power at all. You are not powerful. You are not mighty. You are not dreadful. So there is absolutely no reason why people should be afraid of you, because you have no real power. You have no real power. So he says, why swells thou then? There is no reason why you should be proud, priggish, snobbish, because we have no real power. Right? You can't kill us. You can't kill us. Then now here comes the most important line in the poem. One short sleep past we wake eternally. One short sleep past we wake eternally. So Donne's final and most triumphant affirmation of immortality comes in this line, where he portrays death as nothing more than a transition into an eternally lasting afterlife. So one short sleep past we wake eternally. So one short sleep past we wake eternally. Now, according to Christianity or Catholicism, death is supposed to be a mere transition from temporal life to eternal life. In other words, temporal life changes into eternal life at the point of death. That is how death is regarded by Christians or Catholics. One short sleep past we wake eternally. Now this line. It is in this line John Donne comes to his theme or central idea. Donne's final most triumphant affirmation, Donne's final and most triumphant affirmation of immortality comes in this line, where he portrays death as nothing more than a transition into an eternally lasting afterlife. After our death, we will have an eternal life with God in the heaven. So one short sleep past we wake eternally. After one short sleep, we come back to life. So he has demonstrated the Christian doctrine of resurrection or immortality of the soul. Right? He has demonstrated the Christian or Catholic doctrine of resurrection or immortality of the soul. So why are we afraid of you? Right? There is really no need for us to be afraid of your power, because you don't really have power. You are not powerful. You are not mighty. You are not dreadful. You could not kill me yet. You are a slave to chance, fate, desperate men and kings. You can't kill people. You rely on the power of fate. You rely on the power of kings. You rely on the power of desperate men. You rely on the power of chance to kill people. So you can't kill us. Death doesn't kill people. Instead, it liberates their souls and directs them to eternal life. So one short sleep past we wake eternally. There is a Latin phrase. It is right. I can remember it right now. Vita mutatur non tollitur. Vita mutatur non tollitur. Life changes but doesn't end. Life changes but doesn't end. Vita mutatur non tollitur. So that is the Christian attitude. One short sleep past, we wake eternally, and death shall be no more. So there is no death. Then there will be no death. Once our death, we go back to God, and we will have that eternally lasting afterlife. So there is no reason why you should be afraid of your power, because right then we will not have, we won't experience death. There shall be no death, or death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die. Death, you may also die. That you may also die. So then you understand, friends, you understand that this is a bold denunciation of death. So this is a whole sonnet written by John Donne. A sonnet, you know that sonnet is a poem which has only 14 lines. This is a holy sonnet. A sonnet consists of the octet and the sextet. Here, octet means the first 8 lines. The octet argue against the power of death. The octet here argue against the power of death. That means the first 8 lines argue against the power of death. So the poet, denounce death and comes up with argument after argument to prove his fact that death is not mighty and powerful. In the octet, he argues against the power of death. Then the first 4 lines of the sextet means the last 6 lines of the poem. The first 4 lines of the sextet is a hasty criticism of death. It's a criticism of death. So he is highly critical of death, right? Through arguments, he proves the fact that death is not powerful. It's a hasty criticism of death. So the final couplet, the last 2 lines, the concluding statement is a most triumphant affirmation of immortality of man. So, one short sleep pass, we wake eternally. Death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die. So this is a very interesting poem, holy sonnet written by John Donne, and he says that death is not mighty and powerful. Dear friends, I told you that death was a powerful and personal reality, was a medieval belief. So John Donne goes against this medieval belief and says that death is neither powerful nor dreadful, and it has no real power. So the clash between the medieval beliefs and Renaissance concepts. So metaphysical poet, highly educated poet who sees death in a intelligent perspective, in a highly intelligent perspective, right? So dear friends, so this is a very interesting poem written by John Donne. And death, be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. For those whom thou dost overthrow die not. Poor death, thou canst yet kill me. Then from rest and sleep, which but thy pictures be, much pleasure from thee much more must flow. So the sooner our best men with thee do go, bones, rest of their bones and souls delivery. So one short sleep pass, we wake eternally. That is the central idea that poet wanted to convey. So dear friends, I think I am of the view that you understood this poem, and when you study a poem like this, you have to first of all know something about the poet and his background and what prompted him to write a poem like this. So dear friends, I think you understood this poem very well, and I will once again meet you with another interesting poem, and I also request you all to send me your comments and likes, and also you are also requested to subscribe this YouTube channel so that you can quickly have an access to my lessons. So dear friends, and I will once again meet you with another very interesting poem, and now for the time being, it's goodbye.